Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by the Listening Room Network. Today's guest, Wenz. Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm better now. I haven't seen you in too long, so this is terrific. Thanks.
Yeah, you said too long. I thought you were going to say 2 years. It feels like a lot longer than 2 years. But I don't know. Alice's place, maybe, or some conference.
I would guess a conference, but but it's just, things I think happened like 2 years ago in music world are like, get out, that was 10 years ago. Somebody will put a picture up and I look at the date and say, no, because a lot of us have been around together for a long time.
Yeah, and musician years feel like, it's like 20 years for everyone or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've had a fascinating journey, not just in music, but all around. So there's really just a ton of stuff that we can talk about today. I wanted to start with briefly where you're from and where music started for you. Where were you when you started taking music seriously?
I'm going to cry.
Oh,
so I grew up in Middle Village, Queens in New York.
Yeah.
And we lived with my grandmother, who was from Poland, and music was like a big deal. We were always told she could have sung in the Polish opera, and instead she came here and worked in the sweatshops and, and sold bingo aprons and things like that. But there was always music, she sang for everything, in Polish and English. So,
let me interrupt real quick. Is Wenz a Polish name or?
No, that's on my dad's side. That's like German, French, like Alsace. And there was a Reinhardt in there. And I'm like, well, is there a relation to Django? And then some of the family were like, they were part gypsy, so who the heck knows?
Okay.
But no, on my mom's side was my grandmother who we lived with. They were like the area of Poland where Poland, Russia, the border goes back and forth. So it was like that music, that food, all of that stuff. So then when I was maybe 5 years old, my aunt and uncle who lived in near Washington, my uncle was in the military and they were going to Germany and they had an upright piano. And my dad and a friend of his drove down and picked up this piano that my mom antiqued turkey red and put it in the living room. But back then I think there were 6 of us kids. Eventually there were 7. And the living room was small. And when the house was, the kids were taking up all the space, my parents actually opened up a pull-out couch. And I remember my dad's feet just hitting the keys of the piano. And, they put the couch back at night.
How many kids? How many brothers, sisters?
There are 5 sisters and 1 brother.
Okay.
So 7 of us all together. And my older sister, there's only one older than me. I'm number 2.
Okay.
I'm number 2,
Right.
So she and I took piano lessons and we really could only afford it. Back then, I think it was like $4, maybe it was $2.50 each.
Right.
And so $5 for the 2 of us, but money was tight. And so we had to quit after about a year and a half, but I kept noodling and piano was my first instrument. And so I didn't realize until years later when in my early 20s, I decided to try and take piano lessons. And I'd learned to read music, but I'm not real good at it. And I went to this woman who was very strict and I was like freaking out and went to a guy who played in a pop rock band and he taught me chords and theory. And then he took me as far as he could in a couple of years and passed me on to his teacher, who was this amazing guy named Ray Casarino, who was the head of the Hartford Conservatory Jazz Department.
And that was still in New York?
No, at that point, I was in my 20s and I lived in Massachusetts, but I would go to Hartford, and Ray studied like with Johnny Mercer and wrote 5 books on composition and theory. Wow. And he was like, what do you want to learn to read music for? Learn to compose and write your own. So, and then in the meantime, I don't remember, maybe I was 13, 14, my brother, who was a year and a half younger than me, was given a guitar, and he's a lefty, and they restrung it lefty, and he was really not into it. and I picked that up. And my Uncle Joe Houlihan, my mom's sister married my Uncle Joe Houlihan. There's no Irish in my blood.
Yeah.
He was like big time into Irish music and ukulele, and showed me how to play like 5'2" Eyes of Blue.
So hang on a second. You're learning guitar on a lefty. You're learning lefty guitar and ukulele at the same time?
No, I restrung it.
Oh, you did restring it. Okay. Okay, good.
Stole it back from my brother, restrung it. And then my uncle showed me just on his ukulele, which, same chord progression, just this easy walk down and he showed me that. And then I just was noodling on my own and didn't realize until I was in my 20s that I had really kind of figured out chords. Mm-hmm. And my ear just went there, and I would listen to, I remember, just show tunes or pop tunes, and I would just noodle my way around and play them. And I would get sheet music and play chords, or I would play the melody because I knew it by ear. So anyway, and then I was in a folk mass group with my Catholic church, and the guy who was the priest was a guy named Tom Hartman, who then became Monsignor Hartman, and he was part of the God Squad, which was the Tom and, oh gosh, what was the rabbi? Anyway, Tom and a rabbi did for the Diocese of Brooklyn.
This is not what the movie Leap of Faith is based on, is it? With Ben Stiller and the guy from Fight Club. Anyway, they called themselves the God Squad in that thing. It was a Catholic priest and a Jewish.
Oh my God, I don't know. Yeah,
it's a great movie called Keeping the Faith. And gosh, I want to say Ned. What is his name? Yeah, it'll come to me in the show notes. But it's definitely a great movie to see, and it's basically collaboration between two religious guys.
And they did all sorts of stuff about spirituality. And anyway, Tom, and he became friends with Michael J. Fox because Tom ended up with Parkinson's and he passed a couple of years ago. Mm. But they did a TV show, a radio show. They were on Imus in the morning. They were on Good Morning America. Yeah. And but Tom kind of organized this folk mass group. So I was, there playing protest songs in church, It was like we were allowed to do that.
So you seems like you've got like this sort of rich blend, this rich mix at a pretty early age in terms of being a performer, doing music that's already composed, and yet having this little spark of wanting to be a songwriter, to studying composition, right? Like, did it take you a while to develop and to really start leaning in on the songwriting, or were you doing it all this time while you're doing, again, folk songs and church songs?
I never did any writing, though I was always very much into poetry, reading Thoreau and Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman. And so I was really always into that, have all these books still from all those years. But when I was in nursing school, my dear, incredibly talented friend, Danny Robles, we just always were jamming together. And he was a big Manhattan Transfer fan. Oh, yeah. And we put together this duo, we called ourselves Java. And we did all these fun kind of ripoffs of Manhattan Transfer. But
with only two voices?
Only two voices. At one point there was a third and fourth, but that was kind of brief, but mostly it was just Danny and me. And Danny was the one who said, he got us a showcase out in the Beverly Hills, Hilton or whatever. It was like, we got all dressed up. Like I'd get dressed up like an Andrew sister and he'd wear a zoot suit. And we would do all these showcases. And F. Scott's was a place we played. I'm going back years. And Danny said, we have to write our own. We have to write our own.
And so like, how old were you at that time?
God, I had to be in my late 20s. Yeah. So that's why I started writing. And then I lived in Massachusetts, and but I would go out and do music with Danny, and we would call each other back then, 3 a.m. I got an idea for a song, and we did some writing, and when his guitar was stolen, he called me sobbing, and we just were like brother and sister holding each up through all
And
this.
where was this? Where were you at that time?
I was at that point then living in Massachusetts.
It's still in Massachusetts. Okay.
I went from New York. After nursing school, I lived in Kentucky for a while, actually, in way back Hill, Appalachia. Worked as an obstetrical nurse, and
delivering babies. I
did. When the doctors got stuck on the other side of the coal tracks, the trains would be like 150 cars long.
Yeah.
And train, and the nurses were. I worked the overnight shift, and if the doctors got called in, the nurses delivered the babies.
Yeah.
And it's just what you did, but I remember playing for some people's weddings there, and seeing dulcimers for the first time, and so there was always this little thread of music. And at my nursing school graduation, we all played Day Is Done. I played and everybody sang.
So how much experience or how much of a nursing career did you have? Were you in it for a long time and kept music on the side, or was it a fallback, or what was it?
So I did nursing for 25 years, I think. But what happened was, so I worked as the obstetrical nurse. Then I worked with a psychiatric crisis team in Springfield, Massachusetts. I mean, way back when we had beepers that would go off, and we'd have to go to the bridge abutments or the jails, and it was incredibly stressful, intense work.
When you say bridge abutments, you're talking about like a suicide or like
people ready to jump, or somebody getting a call, go to this, go to the projects. There's a guy who's suicidal, go see him. And I would get there, and there'd be this guy sitting on the stairs with oxygen and a cigarette. And that's why, it was like,
what a scary job.
Yeah. But I loved the people. I loved, it was, the system that is so broken, where people with the smaller voices don't, their rights are the first to be taken away. So I worked there. And then from there I went, and I got this really cool job, working. There was a school for kids who were referred by court, who were, kids who'd been in juvie, or some of them had some learning difficulties and mental health issues and so forth. And I worked there as the school nurse music teacher. So it was really cool, because I got to have the kids had a band, and then we also did outdoor programming. So like kayaking, rock climbing, cross-country skiing. And so it was, all this cool outdoor stuff, but I was doing that and the music and the nursing.
And now I'm guessing you didn't train as a music teacher. So you were kind of like put in this position with having the right background for it, but kind of having to make it up as you went along. Was that?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Well, I mean, what I did was I knew at that point I had gotten studio gear, so I knew how to record. And so, I don't remember if I brought gear in or they had got some, but the kids were, for the band they put together, some of them were writing their own songs. And one of them, actually, I'm still in touch with, Ken Coretta. He lives out in Colorado, and he's got an amazing sound engineering company. Wow. And, he's just an amazing person, and was back then too. So we hit it off big time, and still stay connected. But so at that time, that's when I decided to take piano again. And that was when I connected with the guy who played in the pop rock band. And he and I started writing together, and we entered some little song contest. And we wrote kind of a Mr. Bojangles kind of a song. And it's the first time I've thought of this in years. It was about a guy that I saw on the street when I was with my friend Danny out in LA. And the guy, he was just playing on the corner wearing this kind of old zoot suit, and I decided he was the good time peddler. So Richie Plass and I wrote this song called Good Time Peddler, and it won some honorable mention in a song contest. And at that point, the Boston Songwriters Association reached out to me and asked me to join.
Nice.
And so I would drive from Springfield to Boston to go and hang out with these people and to write. And so I joined that writers group, and they had all of these showcase opportunities for the artists, and they would give a party. Every 10 rejection letters you get from a record company, we'll have a party.
Oh, that's nice. That's great.
Really, really cool, supportive folks. But then I decided to start a Western Mass chapter. So when I lived in Springfield area, I started that. And I remember doing a whole like downtown Springfield, a 4th of July music showcase. And there was one, the Boston folks, we played a bunch, the Hat Shell on the Esplanade in Boston.
Yeah. And, now you're connected, I'm not sure how deeply, but with Neileckstein. And
yes.
Is he, because I don't know where he is, but I know he's in Massachusetts. Do you guys go that far back, or is he a more recent musical friend? He's
25 years, I would say. And some of that other stuff was even 10 years before that. But I met Neil at a Folk Alliance. And that happened after, so I was part of all these songwriting groups and was doing all this stuff in Massachusetts. And then there was this amazing venue in Northampton called the Iron Horse Concert Hall. Maybe you've heard of it. It's considered one of the best listening rooms in the country. And, all of everybody from, Joe Pass, Ella Fitzgerald's guitarist, to Suzanne Vega, to, folks who now Dar Williams. And I would go to the open mics there and hear all these people. I heard Vance Gilbert the first time he'd played there when Geordie Herald, the owner, signed him on as an agent.
Nice.
And Vance got up and blew everybody's shoes off.
Which he still does today.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
So you met Neil at one of these things. So you go way back, because he's had Neil. And how do you pronounce his last name? Is it Eckstein or Eckstein?
Eckstein.
Yeah. So he's been, a valuable part of the Folk Alliance, really a great documentarian of what goes on at those wonderful conferences. And he's, sort of collected this cohort of musicians who kind of go in and out of his recording studio. And I've noticed you in that mix a few times with Eric Schwartz and the
Tom PR and Jagoda.
Yeah, exactly. So that was just kind of a little flashback. I was curious how far back you went with him, because he's been so prolific and productive in terms of just output, videos and music. And,
so I met Neil at a Folk Alliance, and it was, the progression from me, going to the Iron Horse to deciding it was time I do a CD. And I did I did a CD in my own studio, or cassette, way back, and then decided to do an actual CD. And I did not know that this whole Folk Alliance community existed. But so I did this CD, and I heard about this open mic at the Old Vienna in Westboro, Massachusetts. And I went to the Old Vienna, and that is where so many of the people that you would know from folk world would go and hang out on their, Jack Williams was one. That's the first time I heard Jack was there, and Ellis Paul and Vance and Patty Larkin, I think, would go there as well. Anyway, so at the Old Vienna, I heard about the Boston Folk Alliance. And do you know how many years was that? 28 years ago? The Boston?
I don't know. I didn't start going to Folk Alliance till 2005. Okay. So I was, I never considered myself a folkie. I wanted to be the next U2, and I was just more of a pop rock kind of guy, and folk music was kind of like this. I don't know. This, to me, it was all kumbaya and all like stuff that I didn't quite get or understand, and I didn't realize that some of the great songwriters that I was listening to were actually considered folk. Whether it be you already mentioned, Suzanne Vega and Dar Williams, and but Indigo Girls. I didn't know that was folk. So But anyway, yeah, just the idea that, yeah, there's so many of these little interconnections. And what's fascinating to me is because I've always been of the mindset that, like, if you're going to do music, you just got to give it your all. And the idea of having a 9-to-5 job or a full-time job in some other career would just felt like so counterproductive. It took me 20 years to understand that, there are artists out there who have a day job and they create great music and have wonderful experiences and get just as much meaning out of doing shows as somebody who's broke playing for $100 on the weekend. You know what I mean? It's just like there was this I didn't know that was possible. I thought, if you're going to make it in this business, whatever, back then we had a pretty narrow view of what making it in the music business was. And as you get older, you realize, man, there's people leading wonderful lives. You may not know their names, they may not be famous, but they are living wonderful musical lives.
We've seen that at the Folk Alliance. You and I have seen that. And and somebody like Neil is a good example. And and for me, my nursing, I ended up at one point, I was just going to do part-time nursing. I was kicking back to part-time. And this was another psychiatric crisis facility that I interviewed for. And 2 days after they took me on as a per diem part-time person, their supervisor left. And they said, "Can you take the job?" And I said, "I'm a musician now, I'm not available." And they said, "Well, when are you available?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to take summers off to go tour. I'm going to take, weekends off to play. And so we worked it out. And I worked, Monday through Thursday. And with a beeper after I did my bit, I went home, I wrote, I did this, I did that. And so I was able to support the music, which, as you know, getting the ball rolling in music, you're not making a lot of money. And so I was able to pay the bills doing the nursing while honing my craft and going to the conferences. And, if I got asked to do a job out in Kansas, I couldn't just beam out to Kansas, but I would a couple times a year do a whole tour and back. Right. And the way Neil got started is he and his wife, Lori, were doing house concerts. Did you know this? And recorded them. And then he got more and more into recording, but he's a pediatric dentist. So he did dentistry. And then he and I actually, he says that this is the first time he actually wrote a song that he made him realize that he could do something with his writing. And he approached me with this song that he'd already gotten the ball rolling, and it was a great song. And he said, did I want to collaborate? And I hopped on board. And it was the song, 1 month crazier than you. And it was Jonathan Bird, the amazing Jonathan Bird, was talking at Neil's, doing a gig, and said, I've been on the road this long. And somebody said, well, I've been on the road this long. And he said, well, then I'm 1 month crazier than you.
Oh, and you got to write that down.
And so it ended up, Buskin and Bateau recorded it, and Tom Rush played on it. And Tom Rush played it at his 50th anniversary celebration of his music career. And so after that, when Neil had folks at his house, he'd say, hey, you want to write? And he put out an album a few years ago of all the songs he's collaborated on. And now he does all that cool stuff at the Fox Run 5.
Right. If you are enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists we support. Your feedback makes a difference. Right. So Fox Run is a great segue. So that was their house concert series. So you've played at least a handful of house concerts that I know of, and you've had some pretty remarkable experiences. I guess some of them overseas. I would love to hear just a couple of your really good house concert stories.
So I had a tour in Germany with the Daft tour, the Deutsche American Folk Tour, that Rick Polari, songwriter, storyteller Rick Polari, who was a buddy at Pete Seeger's, hooked me up with this whole tour in Germany, sponsored by Martin Guitar. And it was like this whole thing of how people from Germany and the US could get together and collaborate. Right. But on the way there, I went to Slovakia and Czech Republic and Poland. So I'm with my husband Larry, and we've got our gear. I don't remember how we were looking for a place. We stay in these backpacker kind of places, and we're tooling around, and it was in Banska Bystrica or something like that. And there's this guy, and he's clipping hedges, but he's clipping with a groove. I don't know if he had music on or something. Oh, okay. He really got something going on there. And I said, you got a real groove happening there. I said, I'm a musician, and that's a really cool sound. And he spoke English. And he ended up, the guy was on like the Slovakian Olympic mountain climbing team or something. The guy was like some Olympic, and he and his girlfriend had a little kind of a B&B thing, and decided to have me do a little house concert. And
just impromptu, boom, like call a few friends, or how long was it from the time you met him to the time you were performing?
Like 2 days, something like that. So he called out the troops, and it was like a house concert basically. Yeah. And he got up on stage with me, and he played the Clippers. So that was really, really, really neat. And
that's funny. You don't want to be in the front row when he's doing that.
Yeah. So then the next was in Krakow, Poland, which is next to New York, my favorite city in the world. Yeah. Being of Polish descent, it was so amazing to see just the Polish people. They bust their asses working hard, and then they play hard too. It's like it's time, lunchtime, turn off everything, go in the park, listen to music, watch the dancers in the centrum, the square, and feed the pigeons. And so we ended up finding through one of the backpacker books this little B&B, and it was a young couple, and they I always have my guitar with me, and they said, do you want to do a house concert? And I said, yeah. So they invited their friends, and so that was, just like this impromptu thing. And
it's amazing how, being in the sort of the house concert business for so long, it's amazing. We run into these people who love the idea, but they're just not connected in their community. They don't have a lot of friends. They are not just good promoters. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then once in a while, you run into somebody who's just a natural. They could throw a party tomorrow and 50 people would come. They could throw a house concert with somebody that nobody's ever heard of and get 20 people to come over and drop $20-25 in a jar. It's this amazing skill that, they don't teach you this in school, that it's so charming when you find this in real life, people that are natural connectors like that. You're probably one of those people. It's a matter of I don't know, just people who are really good at making and keeping friends, and giving when it's their turn to give, and just a lot of people just care about them and find them interesting, and they throw a party or a house concert, and people come. They don't have to twist arms. They just,
folks want to. Well, it's such a special setting. And so how many house concerts have you played, and how many have you presented? You're the house concert king.
Oh goodness, I wouldn't call myself the king. Probably Jack Williams has that title. But I would say I've probably played in the hundreds, maybe 100 or 200 or 300, something like that.
Right.
And then I've hosted somewhere between 80 and 100, I would imagine, maybe more. Mm-hmm. But really, a lot of my education is from, running this listening room network and being connected to all these people that are hosting and playing shows. And I learn a lot just by observing that landscape and of course, just personal conversations like this. So Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating world to me. And as you know, as somebody who sees people join our network because they want to host house concerts, some of them with huge ambitions, like I want to have 100 people, and they fail to realize that they can only get 5. I've got this perfect space. It's just perfect, but they don't have any friends.
Right.
So it's amazing. And then you see people who have a tiny place
Mhm.
or nothing, nothing wonderful in terms of setting,
Yeah.
but they just connect with people in such a way that people just love to be around them. And, they learn to trust their musical taste and all this kind of stuff. But it's amazing because a lot of people have barriers like my space isn't pretty enough. It's not big enough. We're remodeling this, or, there's just so many reasons not to host a house concert. If you don't have a deep enough desire to do it. But it's amazing. It's oftentimes the people that you least think are qualified to do it are the ones who just take to it like it.
Well, this is someone who is qualified just because she's such a networker, but Alice Schaefer, down here she's in Fort Myers, and Alice's house concerts, there are people who go to every single one. And she's the ACMA, the Americana Community Music Association. Alice was one of that's a brainchild of I think Alice started the whole thing, and then quickly other folks came in, and pardon me if there was somebody who worked with Alice but anyway, she's one of the nucleus people.
Absolutely.
And it has just exploded to where, first it was just Alice doing house concerts, and her space is pretty small, but she loads them in. I mean, here's the space where you go, and there's down through the dining, through the people, for those who don't know house concerts, and I would assume most everybody who's tuning in here would, but folks clear their houses out of furniture, and I've done them here in my yard in Florida. And I don't do a lot of them just because I have a lot going on myself. And I haven't done them in several years. It's just been hotter, and it can be mosquito-y, and you have to kind of really work around that.
Sure.
Now COVID, but I've gotten maybe 50 people just out under my big tree in the yard, and some people come by boat, and it's fun, and you get you do one, and the musicians, they'll come from anywhere.
Sure. The grapevine is pretty powerful when you learn how to put on a good house concert. Word gets out, but think of Alice, like when you meet her, do you think like she's going to be an impresario in the music community? Like she's pretty laid back, and like she's not like super high energy and gregarious. I mean, she's so relaxed.
Yes, she's so grounded, and that's I think part of what makes it so. She just kind of chuckles about this and that. And she was over here for lunch a couple of days ago. What the heck got us talking about? And she was talking about how many moles in a something. And I guess it started with some typo, and where somebody wrote moles instead of miles. And she was like, oh yeah, there are so many moles in blah, 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 to go from here to here. But she's just chuckling and telling me that. But she is just a network. She'll network, or she'll say, you need to meet this one. You haven't met that one yet. She connected me with flautist Kat Eppel, who is one of the gems of the galaxy instrumentalist wise. She plays flutes, and she's Grammy Award winning artist and composer, and she lives down here, and she'll just like show up with her flutes and her big smile and hop in and play in.
Yeah, she showed up when I played a house concert at Alice. Kat was there. Kat came up and played a song with me. It was great. So I think we did some Jethro Tull or something. It was great.
Of course.
Alice sort of speaks to that quiet power that a lot of people don't even know they have, and she's just a music junkie and loves to go to all kinds of events. And if there's not enough, well, we'll just create more. And her one of her talents is just recruiting that whole team, right? There's been just a line of great people who've been part of the ACMA, moving it forward, pitching in when someone needed to pitch in, and whether it's promotion or organizing. And, I just keep hearing great stories about the impact that they're having to aspiring as well as established singer-songwriters?
They have helped so many folks get going. They've done songwriting, actual workshops where, I've done ones on songwriting. I think I did a percussion one. I was gonna do one in the schools. They had some funding, and then COVID came along. But they've also they're opening up new venues. They did one in Lovers Key for a while, right on the beach, and now there's one on the steps of the arts, kind of in the arts district, which is cool. But, one of the things when I lived in Massachusetts, one of my friends asked me basically, could I come and do, my friend Colleen said, hey, I don't want to do regular house concerts, but can you do a show at my house? And I did one there. And then somebody said, well, I want to do one. So I refer to that as the rolling house concerts. You do a show and you say, anybody here want to do the next one? Because some of these people will come, but now you see how it's done. Then you're going to bring in your crowd. And so that's kind of the torch passing of you know.
And part of the reason I was excited to do this series with the ACMA is that, we want to inspire people around the country and around the world to do the same thing. Like, if there's not enough music in your town or not enough of the kind of music that you appreciate, this is a model, the Americana Community Music Association, that can be replicated in different areas. And you can start up a songwriting group, a songwriting support group, a performance
group. Support group.
all that stuff. And, and I'm sure Alice would be happy to give tips and share what she knows, and as well as Bob and the others that are such an important part of that community. So it's great to reconnect with you. Before I let you go, though, I got to hear the Pakistan story.
Oh, God. So when I worked at the crisis center, one of the psychiatrists I worked with, Batul Kazim, was she came from a family that her grandmother was one of the first Bollywood actors. And so there was a lot of music in the household. And so at that time, I was doing a lot of work, as you would, working at a crisis center with relaxation music. And I was gifted with a Native American flute, and I would go in and play it for my patients. And the doctors would call me up. And one of them, Jeff Geller, he's now the president of the American Psychiatric Association. He was the VP back then. And he'd call me up and go, Wenz, what do you have in your, in your satchel so I don't have to give, a control sleeper. And because I did all my continuing ed stuff on integrative medicine, I was like, well, we can use chamomile or hops or, blah, 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 and Native American flutes. And they were like, why are your patients needing so much, fewer meds? So anyway, Batul and I hit it off immediately. And because of her love for music and arts, and she also had been the Pakistani women's badminton champion growing up, when she was like 5'1" and a powerhouse. So anyway, Batul, and gorgeous voice. And so Batul and I worked together for many years, stayed very, very dear friends. And I get a call from her one day after I had then left there and moved here to Florida. I get a call from Batul, and she was adjunct faculty, I think, for Harvard or Yale. Anyway, she was at a symposium on women's rights, and the then Senate chair of Pakistan, Mr. Sumro, he was the guy where if Musharraf had to go out of the country, he was the acting president. So he's doing this presentation about what progressives are trying to do to help women's rights. And she goes up and she's talking to him after, and they had an earthquake that was at the same time we had Hurricane Katrina, and there were almost 100,000 killed, and half of them were kids in schools. And Batul said, do you have someone to do PTSD work there? And they said, no, can you help us? And she said, absolutely. And she said, come on, we're going to Pakistan. So off we went. And when was Katrina? Was that 10 years ago? Something like
more than that. It was, I want to say
12. Anyway, that's when it was right after that. So we went, and we basically, we did a whole presentation for the World Mental Health Association in Lahore, where I played my flutes and talked about guided imagery and flutes. And
did you have to learn some Urdu, or did she translate for you, or what was going on?
Well, thankfully, a lot of the people spoke English.
Yeah.
But she translated into Urdu for me.
Yeah.
But then at one point we went to this, oh my God, it was just one of the most powerful experiences of my life. So we went to, in the Kashmiri region, there was a refugee tent city that was people who lost everybody in the earthquake, and this is for children, and there were a few adults, and there was an 18-year-old very young woman who decided the kids needed a school, so she started this tent school. So we went and we did music with the kids there, and they were like clinging to we're wearing shalwar kameez, the clothing,
right.
and clinging, like, because we reminded them of their mothers. And it was like, and we played songs, and I did stuff, and then they did this song, and Batul translated, and it was like, we'll always love you, you'll always be my friend. And it was like, oh my God. So then we went from there in Mr. Sumro said, because we were his guests, we were diplomatic guests. And he said, when we went to Lahore, it was Batul, me, these two doctors, one from Abbottabad.
I have to ask, during that time, like, because you were his people, you pretty much could have anything you wanted. Did you need like a security detail and that kind of stuff? Was it?
Funny you should ask.
Yeah.
So we're in the car driving all over the country, and I'm hearing sirens, and I'm thinking, boy, there are a lot of sirens. It was we were in the diplomat mobile, so we had the sirens and a motorcade basically. Yeah. But then when we went to Lahore, we went in an armored train car, and we were. It was Mr. Sumro, his bodyguard, my husband Larry went, me, Batul, and these other two doctors. The doctor who was a cardiologist from Boston, and then another doctor who was from there, and they all knew each other, Batul and these two men, and so we went and we did music for the school for blind girls, and all these special groups but these medical folks. Nobody asked what anybody's religion was, what anybody's politics was. This was a humanitarian mission. And but on this armored train car, I mean, every time it was just us in the car, every time we went to a station, they would call ahead, and we're like people with all these guns at each station to protect us. And we got to Lahore, and so while we're driving, Mr. Sumro says to me, "Hey, you want to play at the food court when we get to Lahore?" So, you tell me, Fran, what's a food court, right? That's the mall, right?
Oh my God.
I'm like, yeah, the food court. Sure. Okay, Mr. Sumro, I'll play at the food court. So they uncouple the train, and we get to Lahore, they uncouple the train and move it with, I don't know what, a crane, something to this other secure area, get off, and there's freaking dancing horses. They put roses around our necks, and they said, okay, now we're going to the food court. Well, it was like Times Square. It was like they literally, and we met half the cabinet, and there was, the woman who talked about women's rights and religious rights. And I mean, these were all people who are, folks think, they only hear what they hear in the news. Right. And so these beautiful people, we all meet, and they put us at it's like the dais at a wedding, we're at the and here's me and Batul sitting like in the front center, the Jesus and Mary seat, it's like, oh my God, sorry. And where there's this amazing dinner, and up on the stage are like this quartet of the best musicians in the country, and their piano, percussion, violin, and like flutes, oboe kind of. and they call, and, you ready to play? And of course, I'm, all dressed in their clothing. It was just very surreal.
That's so amazing that you think you're being invited to play like the food court, like at the mall.
At the mall, right.
But but it's the big wig of the country, and you think, well, I can't say no, and so you think you're taking one for the team, and you wind up playing some regal affair.
Oh my God! So these men call me up. And I've got my drone flute, which is it's like it's a pentatonic 5 notes, and one side has the moving notes, and it's like an E flat, and one side has the moving notes and the other has the drone. It's just a stunningly beautiful instrument with spooks, it's just, you hear all this. So I bring this, and I've got ankle shakers that I'm wearing. One ankle are these cocoons that you only get in Chiapas, Mexico, or Botswana. So I've got those on one ankle. And then somebody on the trip gifted me with this other ankle shaker with bells on it that are used for weddings in Pakistan and ceremonial things. So I've got one on each ankle. Yeah. So I stomp out the groove, show them the scale, and they're like, and we started playing. And wow. It was just, and I'm crying, and it was the most unusual and powerful thing, and then I get off this.
And this is before everybody had a camera in their hand, right? So you don't have any footage of it, I'm sure, right?
Well, I think, I keep asking, I should ask Batul again if Dr. Noman I know they videotaped it, but I don't have it, and I want it.
That would be something to see.
Oh my God. And I got off the stage. I mean, I have still shots of it, but no, I don't have video. And I got off, and these men are all touching their hearts and their heads in there. And it was,
That's amazing.
That's why we do what we do.
Yeah. So I have to ask, I know we're almost out of time here, but I have to ask, so you're married. I imagine I have to ask what your husband does to be like married to a Renaissance woman who's doing all this. Like, I guess he gets to be part of it, but I can't imagine what he does for a living to be able to keep up with you.
You're going to laugh. Is he a songwriter? Well, I'll tell a little sidebar is when I lived in West Hampton, I was just talking about this yesterday, a whole bunch of us, there was a songwriter group, and Richard Berman was in it. If you know Richard,
I remember Richard.
Dar Williams was in it, and Jim Henry, and if Cliff Everhart or John Gorka were coming through, they'd join. And the Neils. Anyway, we would all go out like bowling when we weren't doing music stuff. We did other stuff for fun. And one time we went bowling, and everybody said, "Who are you people?" And I said, "Who do you think we are?" And they said, "You all look like a bunch of accountants, and that guy," and they point to my husband Larry, "He's a musician." But no, I met him rock climbing when I taught for the kids with the court, the court referred, the school for youth. And he volunteered there doing outdoor programming. And he taught at a college, it's now Westfield University. He taught at Westfield State College in Massachusetts, and basically started the first wilderness leadership major at a state college in the country. And so his students went on to be project adventure leaders and Outward Bound. But what was cool was that he took a sabbatical a bunch of years ago. And so that was how I ended up going to New Zealand and Australia and Southeast Asia and India was because he was able to take sabbatical because it was travel related, and he taught about camping and backpacking.
Nice.
And I was able to learn songs to then get grants to do my Music of the World program.
Awesome. So one last thing, what are you up to now? Like what are you working on? How's this year been cool for you? What's give me a silver lining for Annie Wenz for 2020?
Well, I guess I begrudgingly got studio gear again. I had gotten rid of I had 2 different studios years ago, and because I just wanted to do music. And then if you wanted to participate, you had to get back into the getting gear. So, I have a board, I have an interface, I don't have a huge expensive setup, but what's been amazing is this network of our friends that we have been at least able to stay in touch and pull each other through. And I was able to, with a handful of our musical lovies who do activist music, Amy Carol Webb and Joe Crookston and Emma's Revolution and Tom Prasad around, Reggie Harris. And we did Get Out the Vote concerts. So we were able to do those, to do music of, to get people going. So that was a blessing. I don't know if I'm going to do another CD. Are you, now in this day when...
No, I think I'm done with CDs. I think, and truthfully, I've not done recording in quite some time, just because I don't know, I was having a tough time seeing where it could go in a fruitful way for me, and I was super passionate about building this network, and I felt the results of helping working artists connect with music fans was just more immediate gratification for me. Just I get that every day, like, oh, thank you, for building this or whatever. Whereas songs, can sometimes take years or decades to find their landing place in the right hearts to have somebody voice that back to you that you actually are making a difference with that song. So especially because I was, I imagine for you, you get a lot more immediate feedback because of the types of shows that you've played. But for me, I don't know. I just got more and more passionate about building this network and seeing where that could go than the debilitating perfectionism that pervades me as a songwriter. It's like you hide behind this desire for perfection, and you just don't. As soon as I get done recording something, I'd hate it. I'm like,
I hear that. I'm reading a book about Darwin, and Darwin had horrible stage fright, and how many folks with Carly Simon and Fred Astaire, but it's also I want, like, now with me, I don't have the bazillion-dollar spaceship that Neil has, and so nothing is good enough. Right. I mean, I had to record a set for Falcon Ridge, right, and for virtual Falcon Ridge last year, and I was like, I had 2 days worth of takes and I hated them all, so but I don't know if I'll do a CD again, but at least I'm feeling like I would just for the people I love who are kind enough to support my music, I'll get to where I'm going to record a video. Or what I have done is I get up in the morning sometimes and play the flute on my dock, because I live on the water. And so I'll do that. But I want to just be able to, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass because you have all the equipment you have to plug in. I want to be able to just come down here, plug in my guitar and play and not have to putz with all the levels. Right.
Yeah, it's great if you can create a situation where when you're inspired, it doesn't, you don't have to spend an hour setting up. And then by the time you're done setting up, it's like, oh, I'm hungry. Let me get something to eat. You just never get around to getting to recording. You've just lost your energy. So yeah, that's a great thing. Great thing to have. Annie, it's so great to reconnect with you and to help you share your story. Hopefully we'll get some people to check out your music, your lovely music. I'll put the link to the website in the show notes. So please give the kind folks at the Americana Community Music Association a big hug for me when you can, when it's legal again.
Yes. And you promise you'll let me know when you're like right in this ball of the hood.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be traveling a little bit more, probably second half of this year. So all right, take care, Annie.
Thank you so much. You too, Fran.
All right, bye-bye.
Big hugs, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover this community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions you have. And if you'd like to learn more about house concerts and listening rooms around the world, please visit and join listeningroomnetwork.com. You can email me from there. See you next time on the Fran Snyder Podcast.